For the third time in 4 postseasons, the Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs will meet, although this time in Orchard Park, New York. The Chiefs get an incredible triumph in a victory in the coldest day ever at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium over the Miami Dolphins. That gets them a trip to Buffalo as the number 2 seed meets the number 3 seed. And, of course, Defending the Kingdom is brought to you by Ticketmaster.
Mahomes throws right side, caught Rice at the 5, angling right, touchdown! Kansas City rookie Rashee Rice, his first postseason touchdown, an 11-yard crossing pattern, and just like Germany, the Chiefs have an outstanding opening drive for a touchdown to start the game.
And hi, everyone. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs, along with senior team reporter Matt McMullen, and here we are again. This feels like a Brady, Peyton Manning-esque kind of battle here because Mahomes and Allen have some playoff history and regular season history.
Yeah, it really does. I think as soon as we found out Mahomes was going to be like this kind of player, this all-time kind of player, the very first thing that everyone wants to do is figure out who his adversary is, who's his villain, right?
Yeah.
And over
Lex
the years,
Luthor to Superman.
Yeah.
Because he is Superman, and Josh is Lex Luthor. I like him, but you're Lex Luthor. Sorry, Josh.
this week for sure.
Yeah.
But like initially it was like maybe Lamar Jackson's that guy. And in recent seasons, hey, maybe Joe Burrow is that guy. But just based on the history and all of the matchups, it really feels like Josh Allen is that guy. And it's also interesting because Mahomes and Allen are kind of similar players in a lot of ways. They kind of play this backyard style of football at such an elite level that it works. You would never teach it to anyone, but it works for them. And they're friends off the field. They did the golf thing a couple of years ago. There's a lot of angles there, but yeah, I think this is going to be just another one of many matchups against the Bills and Josh Allen in the biggest moments.
You could argue Lamar Jackson would be in this conversation, but here's where I'm going. These two quarterbacks are the best at making plays off schedule. And Josh Allen's been brilliant. He was in the Pittsburgh game in the wild card win, but we've seen Patrick Mahomes do it since he became QB1 in 2018. So that's what makes this game exciting because you have no idea what's coming, even within the concept of one play. And the play design may break down, but these two quarterbacks can make it happen. Now, before we go to Orchard Park, New York, even in this podcast, because we're entitling it Another Chapter. It's just like the 5 times that Manning met Brady in the postseason. Manning won the last 3. He was 3-2 against Tom Brady in the postseason. Everybody thinks the Patriots won every game.
Yeah, and every Super Bowl.
They went from 2005 to 2014 and didn't win a Super Bowl. They won a decade.
It was really 2 runs. They had their run where they won 3 of 4, and then they did it again 10 years later.
Winning 3 of 5, right?
Yeah, 3 of 5, yeah. But people, you're right, think that the Patriots just won every single Super Bowl. They didn't.
And Peyton Manning's going, wait a minute, I had a winning record in the playoffs against Tom Brady. Okay, that being said, let's take a trip in the space station that is fueled by Matt McMullen as he's thawed now from the -5, -28 wind chill game against the Miami Dolphins. Let's take a trip around the world.
Well, hold on. We need to talk about how ridiculous that was.
We
did
ridiculous.
Field pass before the game, and I had like a full like face mask on, and I was down there kind of getting acclimated, and I was thinking, this isn't so bad. And then when I took the mask off to do field pass, I put the headset on, all of a sudden, I'm like, I've never been this cold before in my life. And I was thinking, like, how cold can it really be? Like, how cold is cold? It was so cold. I can't believe that the whole event was able to go on the way it did. And, I mean, the crowd was unbelievable, weren't they? I mean, for those fans to power through that and to create the atmosphere that they did was incredible.
I used the word triumph earlier. A friend of mine, it was on Sunday, said that was a triumph. And I thought, that's a perfect word. That's why I put it on Twitter that way, because I've never been prouder in my 30 years of a team to play in those conditions and to handle those conditions that well. Because like we said on Field Pass, Matt, everybody that touched the ball, that's what Coach said on the radio pregame show. That means Winchester. That means Tommy Townsend kicking the ball. I was talking to Harrison Butker after the game. I mean, his leg and foot were like black and blue because he was kicking ice, and a big, huge ice sculpture basically every time. But the way that the offensive players handle it, and especially Patrick Mahomes, we've seen so much toughness, Matt, from him. But for him to play at that level in those conditions was a whole nother level to me.
He's just the best. And you can look at numbers and stats. We love doing that, and all of those illustrate how good he has been in his career already. But when you watch the game, you watch how he takes his play to an even higher level in, frankly, almost impossible conditions in a playoff game. He is just the best player on the field, and you can just tell. You just feel it, and he's going to do whatever it takes to win. And I'm just so glad we have that guy on our team because I can't imagine playing against him. So
well, and as I
awesome.
put on that tweet, it was more than just a single playoff victory. It's a standalone game in and of itself, winning in the postseason, but to do it how the Chiefs did it in those conditions is just kind of set aside in its own special place.
Well, how about some Mahomes fun facts here while we're getting off on a tangent? Because that's what we do here on DTK. So Mahomes passed Roger Staubach, Troy Aikman, and Aaron Rodgers in terms of career playoff wins on Saturday. Passed them. He has more playoff wins than those three players. Here are the only quarterbacks in NFL history with more postseason wins than 28-year-old Patrick Mahomes. Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Terry Bradshaw, John Elway, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, and Ben Roethlisberger. And Big Ben and Brett Favre have 13. So if the Chiefs can win this weekend, he'll match those two players. So we all know this. We know that Patrick Mahomes is already one of the greatest players to ever play this game. But every time he makes a playoff start, kind of think about your surroundings. Soak it in and think about it. You're watching one of the greatest to ever do it in his prime. So pretty special.
And again, we said it on the post game when we were doing Rewind, but this franchise is now 21-21 in the postseason. Before Andy Reid got here, they had 8 postseason wins, and 12 of those 13 Andy Reid wins here are Patrick Mahomes. And I think he's only 4 off being second because he's closing in fast on Montana. Now,
Montana
Brady's
has
at
16.
So I'm telling you, he's right there. So 4 ties, Joe Montana. That puts everything in perspective as well. But I know you've got a space station ready to take off and fly around the world.
I do. We could talk about Patrick Mahomes' historical numbers forever because if the Chiefs win this, and Kelsey, yeah, because I mean Kelsey is Jerry Rice. That's what he is historically. 20 years from now, they will look at Travis Kelsey like they look at Jerry Rice now, which is crazy.
He's right there. 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, and receiving yards, catches, and touchdowns in the postseason. It's not tight end list, and it's not wide receiver list. It's pass catcher dudes list, and it's Rice, Kelsey, Rice, Kelsey, Rice, Kelsey, and he's closing in on Jerry Rice.
Yeah, he sure is. Just an amazing run of success, and that's a good transition into my Around the World because I have 6 for you today in honor of a 6th straight season the Chiefs have gone to the divisional round of the playoffs. Now, since 1990, that's when the second wild card was introduced, that is the 3rd longest streak in league history of going to the divisional round every single year. The only streaks that are longer are the 2010 to 2018 Patriots. They did it 9 straight years. And the 1992 to 98 San Francisco 49ers did it 7 straight years. Then it's the Chiefs going to 6 straight divisional rounds of the postseason. So remarkable. Got to not take this for granted because, as that illustrates, this does not happen very often. All right, 6 people from around the world. We're finally to that point now. We have a listener from Germany. I don't have their name, but shout out to everyone listening from Germany. I was on RTL, which is like German public television, prior to the game. I made my German television debut. I did a report for German television, which was pretty cool.
Wunderbar.
Yep.
Super.
Trey is listening from Visalia, California. Trey moved to Lee's Summit in the 80s and only lived in the area for a few years. But get this. So Bill Kenny lived across the street from Trey, and Todd Blackledge lived down the road. So he became a Chiefs fan for life, even though he moved back to California and has been representing the kingdom out there in Raider country ever since. So shout out to Trey.
I hope he's got his old receiver gloves. Because
Yeah.
don't you know and that they did some 7-on-7 in the backyard somehow?
Well, and especially in that day and age, like, hey, Todd, you want to throw the ball around? Like, I love it. Shout out to Pam. So I'm like the leader of this charge of what Pam did. She successfully converted her husband from a Broncos fan into a Chiefs fan.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Exactly. So if we have any first-time listeners, my wife was originally a Broncos fan, grew up in Boulder, Colorado. I have successfully converted her into a Chiefs fan. There's a lot of people out there that have done this. So shout out to Pam.
I love Chiefs Kingdom evangelism. One
Yep.
of my favorite things.
Yep, they see the light. It's a beautiful thing. So they live in Arizona, but made the trek to Kansas City for the win over the Bengals a few weeks ago. And that was a fun game. That was like a playoff atmosphere kind of game. So shout out to you, Pam. Good job. Ironically, shout out to Mike in Denver, Colorado. Mike representing the Kingdom out there in Broncos country. Then a few people I met in person. I met Dwayne at Chiefs Fit in Overland Park. So Stephanie Judah, who is our director of entertainment teams here at the Chiefs, which includes the cheerleading squad, asked me to go out and speak to the cheerleaders if they had any questions about the postseason and scenarios and all this stuff, because it's all you and I do is bury our noses in this stuff. So I went out and gave a presentation.
That was
to
a
them.
tough job. Somebody has to do that. So.
Someone has to do
Way
it.
to go, man. Way
Yeah.
to just like step out there and go, hey, I'll do that.
I gave the presentation.
I'll find time.
I met Dwayne at the front desk. Awesome guy, watches all our shows. So shout out to you, Dwayne. And then lastly, this is one for you. So shout out to David. I met David on Friday when I was frantically trying to purchase winter weather gear. I bought some snow pants, and David helped check me out. And it turns out he had an experience with you. So years and years ago, when you were the voice of K-State, you apparently ran out of gas trying to get to Abilene, Kansas.
I did.
And David,
one of the many times I ran out of gas.
Yep, and David drove you all the way to Abilene from Manhattan. Yeah.
That reminds me of when I had an interview actually to be the voice of the Bears.
Wow.
It was so you're thinking the coldest you ever felt. You think
That was the coldest I've ever been.
okay.
Yes.
I would say it's third for me. The first was when it was minus 18 real temperature, and I had an interview to be the voice of the Bears. I'm trying to get to
Wow.
WGN in Chicago. I'm doing K-State then. My car totally freezes up at mile marker 196 on the turnpike. It's right at the Lecompton exit near Lawrence.
Yeah.
And I can't get out. I mean, I'd have hypothermia and die, and nobody will stop. And I'm in a panic. I got to get to a plane to get to Chicago. And a guy stopped, and I just gave him all the money I had, and I said, "Hey, just get me there." He gets me to the airport. I get to O'Hare. This guy's driving me down a sidewalk to get to WGN on time, and I have this interview, the biggest interview of my life, to be the voice of the Chicago Bears, and I didn't get it. So then I'm thinking, what's happened in my car on the turnpike? Because I got to come back, and I'm actually doing an event for Bill Snyder at K-State, and I got to make it back for that from Chicago.
Wow.
So I'm in a tow truck because they said your car. So I get a guy to drive me to my car, so they're going to tow my car. So I'm in the tow truck with the car to get it to Topeka, so I can get another car to get to Manhattan. And the tow truck's engine blows out.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not making this up. This is planes, trains, and automobiles. This all happens on one day of my life. So the moral of the story is I froze to death, almost froze to death, and two, I didn't get the Bears job. So I got the Chiefs job. It's even better, so it makes me appreciate it.
I'm sure at the time you were disappointed. There are hundreds of thousands of people out there that are quite glad it worked out that way. You should not be the voice of the Chicago Bears. You're the voice of the Chiefs.
But when the tow truck's engine blew, I just started laughing.
That's the universe telling
No,
you
I'd been
this.
stressed all day. Can you imagine what that interview was like with like the Bears brass and stuff? Like
The ghost of George Halas is there.
Yeah, this is George Halas. And so it was like, wow, okay. But yeah, that was the longest day. But there was another time growing up. When you grow up in rural Kansas, you have to take care of livestock in this. And I mean, it was chopping ice. And wow, it made me appreciate when we were down there doing that show. I was thinking in the back of my mind of all the folks in the Chiefs Kingdom who are listening to this podcast, a lot of them, who have to handle the elements. They don't have the choice just to stay inside because they have animals to take care of. And believe me, as a youth, that was the second coldest. This would be the third coldest.
Yeah, I'm a city kid. I was super cold on Saturday night.
I was cold too now. Don't think I was like, oh, this ain't nothing. No, I was freezing. And I had a little bit of water, right? I was taking it immediately froze. I walked out of the tunnel, it was like immediately froze, like a Disney movie. And it was just like, oh my gosh, how cold is it? And then my face never really felt right, I don't think. No, save the emails and the tweets. But that was crazy. How did we get on this path?
I don't
we're
know.
way off schedule.
This is what we do. Well,
Yeah.
because David drove you from
I
Manhattan
forgot
to
that.
Abilene.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, he drove you all the way.
I drove out. What a gas! Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the many times I've run out of gas. But thank you, David.
Well, it's funny because
You got more people that have saved my life.
I'm sure they're out there. Please reach out to us.
Oh yeah.
When he told me the story, I wasn't surprised at all because you're always going 100 miles per hour wherever you're going.
Yep.
And it's like, I have no gas. And luckily, there are people who are out there that are trying to help. And you didn't miss a beat. So anyway, that's what we've got for today. I thought you'd like that one.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. And yeah. So many times, and we're talking survival here. But now here we go. We're calling this another chapter. But we got to give some props here to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
When they came here on the 9th of December, now they had 2 weeks to get ready for the Chiefs. And going back to that December the 10th game, I was reviewing it. That seems like 2 years ago. I mean, that stretch from when we came off Germany to the end of the regular season in the game against the Chargers just seems like, and I know I had COVID and I missed the game against Green Bay, but that was one of the toughest stretches really over the last several years, I thought. But now Buffalo was 6-6 when they came to Kansas City. Their chances of winning the AFC East was 5%. Miami was steamrolling to the division title. And the Bills, give them credit, win the last 5 regular season games. They win the wild card game over Pittsburgh. But this is a team that you have to respect for what they got done in that difficult point of the season.
Absolutely. And I think because we've played the Bills so many times, I think a lot of us kind of knew this was going to happen. I mean, when the Bills were 6-6 and they have like a 5% chance to make the playoffs, I look at them, I'm just like, these are still the Buffalo Bills. This is still Josh Allen. This is still a team that's been there and done that. And I think that experience is invaluable. And I think it really helped them here to win their 5 final regular season games and then win that game over Pittsburgh over the weekend. And, yeah, you look at what they've done here during this stretch where they've found a way to get back into the playoffs and get back to Bills football. It's a little bit different than what they've done in the past because when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, and if you're not watching all these games, you might think that Allen has just gone crazy during this 5-game stretch. But really what they've done is they've ran the football really effectively. They lead the NFL in rushing attempts since week 14 with 180. That coincides with their winning streak. They're 13 rushes ahead of the next closest team on that list. It's crazy. And they've gained 744 yards on those rushes, averaging over 4 yards per rush. They're averaging 148.8 rushing yards per game in that span, 5th most in the NFL. And you contrast that with their passing numbers, which you think would be really high if they're winning all these games. But they're only averaging 204.6 passing yards per game, 21st in the NFL since week 14. So they're running the football with a lot of success. That's the main key here for the Chiefs. Yeah, you got to stop Josh Allen. Everyone knows that. But first, you got to stop the run here in this game.
There are triangles here I'm going to bring up now. 2 triangles, one for the Chiefs and one for the Bills. And the Bills one is, and I don't want to put up Stephon Diggs' bulletin board material. He's had 39 targets in those last 5 regular season games and 24 catches. But there is a new triangle the Bills set. How did they win 5 straight games to end the regular season? To your point, Josh Allen, who had 18 interceptions this year, was 5 touchdowns and 5 picks in those 5 regular season games. It was the running game, but it was Josh Allen running the football. Joe Brady takes over as offensive coordinator. They fired Ken Dorsey, and the Bills went back to 2021. 44% of Josh Allen's rushing attempts were in the last 5 regular season games of the year. And then we saw his scramble and great play against Pittsburgh, the second longest run by a quarterback for a touchdown in postseason history in his 52-yarder. The second part of the triangle was there all along, and that was a new emphasis with James Cook, Dalvin's brother, great at Georgia. You and I both liked him at Georgia coming out for the draft. But then they made him a receiver. It's kind of ironic here, but they established him in the run game. He hurt Kansas City in the passing game. He had big plays, including a 25-yard touchdown. But the third part of the triangle is interesting. It is rookie Dalton Kincaid, who they have used in the slot a lot, basically as a wide receiver. And not that he's had a whole lot of volume in terms of catches, but it's what he's done with those catches. When you look at what Dalton Kincaid did, he had 171 yards in the last 2 games. He was big in the game against Pittsburgh, 3 catches, 59 yards. He now has become a weapon along with Dawson Knox. But to me, it's kind of a Kincaid, Cook, Josh Allen triangle.
And Dalton Kincaid is really the result of how Travis Kelce has changed the NFL, in my opinion. Because if you look at Dalton Kincaid, he is one of those hybrid receivers that is playing tight end. A really big guy who is really fast, who has great hands, who in college was essentially a wide receiver, but is playing tight end because of his size. And they use him as such. And, yeah, he's been great here down the stretch. A player that we liked a lot in the draft process that obviously went in the first round for a reason, and he's showing why he went in the first round over the last several weeks. It's going to be a challenge here for the Chiefs defense because in recent years, this Bills squad was Josh Allen, Superman, and he's got Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, and they're going to light it up down the field. That's what they want to do. And really, this iteration of the Bills, how they've kind of found themselves over the last several weeks, it's much different. And it's about running the football. It's about using the tight end. And it's interesting because this is kind of the evolution of Josh Allen in a lot of ways, where the league has kind of adjusted to what he does well, so then he adjusts back. And that's why he's one of the best players in the league, because he was able to do that. So this game will be a challenge once again, but this Chiefs defense has been so good this year. And if you look back at Week 14, the Bills ambushed the Chiefs. We all know that. They got off to a 14-point lead, and they had 139 yards on their first 3 drives. But after that, on their final 6 drives, they go for just 188 yards and 6 points. So I think a fast start defensively is key in this game. And the good news is, aside from that hot start for Buffalo back in Week 14, we've seen that the Chiefs can stop this Buffalo offense.
And the adjustment Josh Allen has made has gone back to his roots, because he's actually gone back to the Josh Allen of the early years of his career and the way he's doing it. Some are design runs, some are off-schedule plays, and they're still getting some shots, right? Shakir can be a target down the field. Diggs certainly can, but a lot of those come from off-schedule plays by Allen. And then Kincaid, to your point, can run every route on the route tree, 1 through 9. It's not just running go routes down a seam like a tight end route. He's like Kelce in running all of the route numbers on the route tree. Now, for the Chiefs, though, I think they've established their triangle, because now you have the Kelce, Rice, Pacheco triangle. Not that others aren't part of it, but that becomes your base. Okay, we're talking geometry here. You have this base triangle of those 3 guys, and other guys now spin off of that. And let's don't lose sight of the fact that Pacheco did not play in that Week 14 loss against the Bills.
And that's a huge deal. And neither did Drew Tranquill on defense. He didn't play in that game either, or Donovan Smith, for that matter. And Nick Bolton was in his first game back from injured reserve, so still kind of getting his feet wet. Nick Bolton, obviously, just fine now. He's back playing great football. So this is a healthier Chiefs team than what the Bills saw back in Week 14. I totally agree about the triangle, though. And here's one of the interesting things to watch here in this game. The Bills are dealing with a lot of injuries defensively. I'm going to list some guys off here. Some of these guys still may play. We don't know. But the guys they did not have in the wild card round due to losing them in Week 18 were linebacker Tyrell Dodson, corner Rasul Douglas, and safety Taylor Rapp, all significant contributors. Then here are the players they lost in the Steelers game just last week. Corner Christian Benford, nickelback Teron Johnson, linebacker Terrell Bernard, and then linebacker Balin Spector. Those players, if you look at the snap counts that they had back in Week 14 against the Chiefs, 348 defensive snaps. Bernard, Douglas, Johnson, and Benford played every single snap in that game. Now, it sounds like Rasul Douglas will likely be back, and I'm sure some of these guys will be back. But it's something to watch, because those many significant defensive players either not playing or being limited is a big deal, because where are those 3 players that you mentioned, talking about Pacheco, Kelce, and Rice, where are they at their best? The middle of the football field. And those players that the Bills may be without or may have limited are linebackers and nickel corners, players that play in the middle of the field. The middle of the field, I think, is the key to this game. If the Chiefs can find success in the middle of the football field continuously, over and over again, and march down the field, because this Bills defense is struggling in that area, that is something to watch, and it could be one of the major keys to a victory for the Chiefs.
Let's also remember that they have 3 main players on injured reserve that will not return. Matt McMullen was lost early back in October. Tre'Davious White as well, and Jordan Phillips, who is a stud in the middle along with Ed Oliver. He's on injured reserve, won't return. So they have had they've taken some real shots to that defense, and yet they've been able to kind of stay they've kept their resolve. the turnovers are takeaways. They have 30 takeaways, but we've always said this. What do you do with those takeaways? They have 99 takeaway points. That's third in the National Football League. And then the fun stat that I thought, we know how good the Chiefs defense has been in this last half of the season. In the last 8 games of the year, the Chiefs only allowed 151 opponent offensive points. The Bills allowed 151. They allowed the same over an 8-game span. So it tells you that the Bills have had to be resourceful, even though they have taken some real shots injury-wise.
Yeah, they've been really impressive. And since Week 14, this is the number 4 total defense in the NFL, allowing just 276.6 yards per game. The Chiefs are third at 270.8 points or yards allowed per game. They're also 5th in scoring at 26.8 points allowed per game since Week 14, and they have not allowed more than 22 points during their winning streak. So, yeah, they've had these injuries, but they've found a way, and the takeaways really are the big part of it. And if you watch the Bills-Steelers game on Monday, that was evident that the Steelers had their opportunities in that game, but a fumble here, an interception there. The Bills, despite some issues this season, are far too talented to give them extra opportunities with the football. And the Chiefs fell victim to that back in Week 14 as well. If you remember the Chiefs' opening drive, they were rolling right down the field, kind of a fluky interception. All of a sudden, the Bills got rolling.
A.J. Epinesa tips it. It was a great play.
It was a great play, and that's the kind of thing you have to avoid against these guys because they are too good to give extra possessions to them. So this is an obvious point, but you cannot turn the ball over in this game if you're the Chiefs. And that's why the game last week against the Dolphins was so encouraging because they were just surgically efficient offensively, running the football, getting yards after contact. Patrick Mahomes dealing the ball all over the place, no mistakes, just making sure every single drive, let's get points. And that's the same effort we need here in this game. The only caveat would be I'd like to see the Chiefs finish in the red zone more against the Bills here in this one compared to what they did last week against the Dolphins. But otherwise, that was the recipe. Possess the ball, move down the field, no mistakes, and score points every possession.
The Bills Mafia can't wait. The Chiefs Kingdom can't wait. Josh Allen can't wait. Patrick Mahomes can't wait. And by the way, Josh Allen's part of the triangle because he runs the ball and design runs. You can say, what happened to Mahomes? He's not in the triangle? Yeah, it's a diamond.
He's in the middle of the triangle.
Yeah, he's right there. So let's just get that straight. But we do know this. Get ready, folks. It's the Bills and Chiefs in the postseason, and that means another chapter.